Here with Young Birds 365, McMullen, McDonald, and McFranklin. We'll bring them into the Mac and Mac Club for it today. Our friend Franklin from NJ.com jumping on board with us. Glad you made it back from Arizona safe and sound. Johnny Mac says tough sledding for all you guys, but you're back here in the Delaware Valley. That's all that matters. Here's why I want to start with you today, Chris, since way too much of what we talk about these days has to involve gambling. And guilty as charged. I got my wagers that I put in on the Super Bowl and lost money because most of them were tied to the Eagles winning the game. What kind of odds would you have needed to bet on Harrison Butker missing that 27-yard field goal at the end of the game, that he could go doink off the upright again? How heavy would the odds have been needed for you to go, yeah, the Eagles are going to dodge his ball here. He's going to miss a 27-yarder.
I think for me, I'm a big fan of The Office. So when they said if it had to be 10,000 to 1 odds, I need to see 10,000 once. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, then he gets that one too. Then he'll go that. But otherwise, it's like
Harrison Butker. That'd be a Blair Walsh. But the Blair Walsh that was about a 27-yarder, somewhere in that range. But that was really bad weather. So yeah, the Eagles were in trouble. Well, I guess we'll start with the game since we got to get that out of the way. 4th and 3. That was the first question. Nick got. I didn't even think about it. I like Nick's explanation. Like Bob Lang had to, make him aware that question was probably coming. He would have had to have made me aware if people were advising me on Burst 365. Like, why is this an issue? Just because of the results? Because you can't go for it on 4th and 3 at your own 32 in the Super Bowl. And this is one of the most aggressive teams. He said 32 out of 32 NFL coaches would have punted that football. I agree with him.
I would between that 4th and 3, the things I heard between a 4th and 3 and also kicking a field goal instead of trying to go for it down late when you're late, kicking a field goal instead of trying to go for it.
4th and 6, by the way?
Yeah, it's front of it. Like those, I'm like, nah, you can't do that because even though this team, the field position, and then you're just giving them. I just don't get why.
Because they gave them field position because they can't cover a punt. Well, Aaron Cepas is a bad punt, but that's hindsight. Obviously, you're not going to. Oh, we're going to give up a 65-yard punt return. Well, yeah, if you give me that information, yeah, I'll try to go for it. Might as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot going now that because of the result that we've seen happen because they lost because we're sitting here now for, I don't know, was it February? So 5 months before we see training camp, 5-6 months before we see training camp, and it's just going to sit there and like, all right, we need to find something where it is the what ifs things, and I neither situation. I think I have no problem with either situation that Nick decided to punt and we did there. Is I don't know. I wish I knew. Like
sounds like 35 out of 35. We can add Jody Mack, me, Chris Frank.
There you go.
And I don't even have the analytics.
35 exactly right. All right, we went off on a punting jag. The coach was asked yesterday about Michael Clay's status. Definitive or defensive? Because there was no doubt left. It wasn't hemming and hawing or hedging. He basically came out and declared that Michael Clay is in good stead after having what I would suggest would be back-to-back poor years as a special teams coach, or the performance of his special teams have been poor. What did you make of the definitiveness that the coach used in describing Michael Clay and his special team status?
I was a little shocked, honestly. I know head coaches, they value their assistants almost like the kids or other extended family members, and
even though Carson Walsh,
yeah, like that way too. And the next thing you know, a couple of days later, they're going like, "Wait, what?" Even though it's fired from my head of Doug and all that stuff, but yeah, I just don't see. I probably would have. I wouldn't have been that definitive. I may have used back channels to just ask around. Probably would have gotten back to Michael. It probably would have. But at the same time, it's like realizing, hey, you know what? This is your last. Even if it didn't go with another guy, this is your last chance. You have to continue to show steady improvement, because if not, you have to move forward. And earlier this year, did they improve? Yeah, they did improve over the course of the year. But it was They moved. They went from the 30, special PFF. I think they went from 32 all the way up to 29, which is yeah. But when you look at the coverage teams, I know they had a lot of young guys. You guys like like Kyron Johnson, you had Ellis, you had all those other younger guys that are still part of the team, and they grew into the roles. But here again, like, are you going to use? Are a lot of those guys still going to be back next year because you're going to have a new crop of rookies coming in, and teams going to look different as well too. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't have been as steadfast as I was when it came to that.
All right, I'm gonna defend Michael Clay, and here's why I'm gonna defend Michael Clay. One, he's a nice guy, but
Yeah.
even more so, and I can't judge him as a coach, but I do know from watching this team over the years, they placed a lot at one time. They placed a lot of emphasis on special teams, and I always bring up Chris Maragos, who, by the way, is a rich man. At least if that settlement holds up. Brian Brayman, people bring up a lot. Players like that. In the Dave Pipp era, they always seem to keep one or two slots for, really good special teams players. But if they have to play defense or offense, you're going to be in trouble. But they understood the value of special teams. And even going back to Super Bowl 52, when we said, all right, who's the better team? One of the big advantages is Super Bowl 52 versus Super Bowl 57. They had Donnie Jones, who at the end of his career, but man, that guy knew how to punt, knew what to do. You're not going to have, coverage going one way and the punt going the other way with Donnie Jones. They valued. Now, Howie Roseman deserves all the flowers for putting together this roster. Did a phenomenal job, but he went with young players on special teams. Your gunners are Zach McPherson and Josh Jobe. Your punt returners, Britton Kobe. They didn't get a kickoff returner. Boston did a nice job after they realized Quez couldn't do it again. And Britton didn't have the long speed. And then you have Aaron Cepas, a young punter who they're trying to turn into, they should have kept Cam Johnston. The one part we always talk about personnel of this team, and everyone says Jonathan Gannon stinks. It's all the personnel. Well, then you can't say Michael Clay stinks because he didn't have the personnel.
See, part of me thinks that in order to get some of those free agents that they did, they had to sacrifice somewhere.
Yeah.
So you had to use a lot of that younger talent and able to do that. And I think when you look at some of these guys, the one thing when you look at the billing was Kyron Johnson was built as this guy who was going to be a great special teamer when he came in the draft. So you banked on that. The latter part of the year, you lost Sean Bradley with a wrist injury. He was part of that core special teams when you had that. And you look at some of those other Reed Blankenship, when he started playing more defense, you didn't use him as much as you did there. So you start, and it's funny because it's inverted. Like you didn't have as many pieces, and then the coverage got better. But the one thing that the one area I think everybody kept saying there was a concern even going into the season was Aaron Cepas, and I didn't address that at all. And it's one of those things where it's a joke, but you kind of do wonder now. Is they were trying to work, they were working Cepas back, and they were trying to work him back, and you finally deactivated him. But I wonder how he was obviously rusty. He doesn't do any game stuff. Should they have gone with Brett Kern? Because at least he was in the flow.
They should have. And hindsight, they should have went with Brett Kern. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're probably kicking themselves a little bit. But you bring up some of those names, and you're right with Sean. Sean Bradley's one of their better special teams player getting injured. And who else did you mention? I forget.
Kyron.
Kyron as a rookie. But again, Chris Maragos, he was in the conversation for 5 years for being the best special teams player in the NFL. They don't have that guy. And they used to make it their business to try to find that guy. Even when they had Rudy Ford when he was healthy. Rudy Ford was phenomenal. He's one of the best gunners I've ever seen. And he actually played pretty well at safety for the Packers this season. But
let me take a shot at defending Howie on this. who is the Chris Maragos in the National Football League today, John?
Yeah, that's Howie's job. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Because
but there are better guys.
It's a league-wide thing. It's kind of like relief pitching in baseball. Over time, it just became, we're now going to use a 13-man staff rather than a 10-man staff. We're not going to have starters pitching into the ninth inning. Well, guess what? We don't have room on our roster for specialized special team players because we need 6 backup defensive tackles. That there has been an emphasis switched in the same roster size. They haven't added roster space, that you need those situational substitution guys to be able to go into the games. So therefore, they just don't have room for a superstar special
Yeah, but they
teams
used
guy.
to make room. That's what I'm saying. They used to make room. They
But
used
the
to be one of those
philosophy of
teams.
roster building in the National Football League has changed, John. When did the Eagles ever have 7 defensive tackles up on a given Sunday? They just don't. And now they do because that's what they like. They like to have the just continually changing guys on the defensive line, and that takes away from a super special teams guy.
I think a lot of guys.
You can disagree with the philosophy, but that's what their philosophy was this year.
I think a lot of times too, when they look at it, they're hoping that a lot of these younger athletic guys, when I try to develop, at least try to get them some things. And I think that maybe that's the thing. Maybe when you look at some of these, the athleticism of some of these guys, when you look at the quick speed, some of these guys and decision making, maybe you got to burn like one of those comp picks they may have 4th, 5th round on a guy who you know is going to take about 2 or 3 years to develop into a potential starter, a reliable starter. But you say, hey, you know what? This guy could be something, like not calling the person like you had to get like Trotter, but like remember he said that first year when he's at Boston. Maybe you get a guy who you see potential in them who can really be that, because I think we all agree Nakobe Dean's not going to be a special teamer his whole entire time during his tenure here. Maybe you get a guy like that to try to develop into that, at least so you can have that, so on a cheap or a cheap contract that you can just use in there and throw in there. Hey, you know what?
Yeah,
this is our guy.
I don't know if anybody's a special teams expert, to be honest, because everybody kind of just but those guys should be, and they know because they've done it before. And I think what you're saying, Jody, I think it's got more to do with the money. Like if you have somebody like Maragos who's playing for 7-8 years, you're up to $2-3 million. You got to pay that guy significant money when you start talking. Whereas you got to pay Kyron Johnson a rookie deal, and you say. But one thing, if you remember, way back in training camp, and we're getting too deep in the weeds on special teams, but what the hell? It's the off season. First 365. Remember, Michael said there's so much difference between special teams in the NFL and college. So just because you were a good special teams player in college doesn't mean it's going to translate. And he was kind of shitting on Kyron a little bit because he wasn't ready. I don't know, man. I think they're going to learn from that mistake because when Phipp and Chip were here, and then Phipp obviously stayed, they paid more attention to special teams. That's why I'm defending Michael Clay a little bit, because I just didn't think they had the personnel.
And I'll stick to the way rosters have been built in the National Football League has changed, and it's a tougher job. Maybe that's why they're defending Michael Clay, because they know it's a tougher job because they're not allocating resources the way that they used to. But yeah, I don't see Howie changing and saying, yeah, let me get 2 specific guys, and all I'm going to expect them to do is to play special teams. All right, special teams aside, the Eagles came up short in the Super Bowl. They lost to a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame quarterback. But the defense didn't get the job done in the second half. And despite that, the fact, Jonathan Gannon got a job as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And I took some calls on Monday and Tuesday night about him slinking out of town and not facing the music here in Philadelphia. Well, he talked about Philly, talked up Philly a lot yesterday in his press conference as the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Last game, Jonathan Gannon's defense here in Philadelphia. About what you expected, major letdown. He was again, Sirianni said yesterday on one of those 2 touchdowns down by the goal line. Yeah, no execution. In other words, player's fault. We had him in the right place. The player just made a mistake. The other one said that they got out schemed by Andy Reid. How would you describe the Eagles' defense in the Super Bowl, Chris?
Well, I probably put 60% of the blame on Gannon, and I probably put 40% of the blame on players. I think it was when you look at some of the calls at certain times. Like, I'm a proponent. I have no problem with you blitzing Mahomes at certain points. I don't think you need to send 7. I think you could have gotten home with 6 a couple times, but you saw what happened. You just was wide open, and then you waltzed in for a touchdown. I think a lot. Also, I look at some of the adjustments they were trying to do when he saw they were trying to use the run a little bit more. I thought I probably would have maybe played Linval Joseph a little bit more instead of Jordan Davis, because just overall that interior defensive line didn't play its best. The defensive line obviously didn't play well because they had 0 sacks, and I know some guys say we're slipping and everything, but when you look at overall interior line play, there's too many times they're running themselves out or twisting themselves out of position, and then they got so many yards in the middle of the field. So I do see the game plan for me a little bit. I wasn't the biggest fan of, but then I still think some of those players they could have played a little bit better as well too. And I know saying, well, we felt like we were playing a winter class. It looked like they were playing a winter classic all of a sudden in Arizona, but it didn't. It still should have made some adjustments in that aspect too. But
by the way, props to Howie Roseman for not even going down that road. He got asked the question about the field, and all he said was both teams played on the same field. Yeah. He said it twice. So I give him credit for that. Now, maybe because he's going to get fined. I don't know. But I like the fact that he said that. Yeah, here's one thing, and I'm sure you saw this, Chris. I don't know if you saw it, Jody, but NFL Films put up the Sky Moore touchdown, and everybody a bunch of guys were mic'd up. And he didn't out scheme anybody because they didn't run the stinking play correctly. They were completely Keystone Cops, wrong formation. Patrick Mahomes was able to save it and get Sky Moore going in the proper direction. So that's why I'm not blaming that. Now, I think what you said, which is ironic because of all the fans crapping on JG, didn't change, doesn't do adjustments. I think the exact opposite. Why the hell is he blitzing what he doesn't blitz all year? Why is he playing so much man coverage what he doesn't play man coverage all year? And then you got guys blowing their responsibilities. That's the problem I have with JG. What the hell? Why you talk all year? Oh, everything's the same. Nothing changes. Everything changed. Why?
I think it's one of the things where you knew you had Andy Reid was going to study that defense for 2 weeks, and you know that we all know how Andy does when he has extra time to look and prepare for a team. So you had to throw something at him that he wasn't going to be expecting, and we know again it was mostly passive. Even though the Eagles were about, I think it was like they were ranked 16th or 17th, something like that, in amount of blitzes this year. It still wasn't along like say the Cardinals or Giants where they were blitzing like, hey, it's a snap. Send everybody there, but he's probably figured, you know what? He's probably thinking I'm going to sit down and be passive, and even from the tape from last year. So he figured, why not just do it again? So I don't blame him for that aspect. I think most of the guys, I think Slade, some of the other guys are better man cover guys in zone. I think they prefer playing man a little bit more. So yeah, I got no problem with that.
Well,
I just didn't think the timing of some of those blitzes was like,
and Slay's a great press coverage corner when he's covering the guy he's supposed to cover.
Right.
When he's not so good. And James, we all know, is a better zone corner. So I don't know. You go 16-1 with the quarterback up to that point. I'm not changing a lot, but that's me. And they changed too much.
The quarterback's on offense. I'm with Chris on this one. You needed to throw some wrinkles in there for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Blitz, I don't know if that's where I would gone because Mahomes is the best against the blitz quarterback in the National Football League, but man-to-man on the outside. And, yeah, I think the corners kind of let him down a little bit. All right, staying with the defense moving forward. Yesterday, Nick Sirianni said he's open-minded to potentially changing some things on scheme. He has his core values, and that's going to stay the same, but they're not married to just hiring someone or advancing someone within the staff who is just going to keep the defense in place the way that it is right now. You buying what he was selling, that he's open-minded to change, or do you think he was just saying that yesterday because they're not ready to hire someone defensively and they've got to keep an open mind, at least as with a public face on it?
I think they're trying. I think it's a good way to try to see what other defensive coordinators are doing. I think both coordinator spots are going to be in-house. I think Denard Wilson's going to wind up being the guy when all is said and done. But I think when you look at it's a chance to see what other defenses are doing. You bring in Vance Joseph, see what man schemes he's using, see what blitzes he's using, put it on tape, maybe record that interview and say, okay, we know we got this, build the book for what he does this way, and just continue to bring other guys and just see that. But I think it's and for theirs, I hope it. And the reason why I asked what the timeline is because I think they have to get something sooner than later because you got the combine coming up. And you need to find you want to have your defensive coordinators input in that room when you're asking these prospects questions about scheme and so they can get a good thing to do it. So I don't think it's going to be. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they rush. It's thorough in the sense that they got and then I keep bringing up Jamal Singleton example of 9 times, 10 times. So I can see in the next week they talk to 9, 10 guys, but they finally decide hey, you know what? Yeah, Denard's our guy, or maybe even Nick Rallis, but. I just think it's trending more to Denard, but it's just a chance to go and see what everybody around the league's doing defensively and pick brains and do that. I'd do that if I was him, try to collect.
Yeah, it sure sounded like Chris. By the way, Nick was talking. I think he said in-house 3-4 times. I mean, we all kind of know Brian Johnson's going to be the offensive coordinator, but I think the DC's a little bit more uncertainty at least. But it sure looks like. We're up to Nick, it'd be Denard Wilson. So if it's not Denard Wilson, does that tell us, Howie and Jeffrey are getting involved?
I wouldn't put it past it. I wouldn't put it past it. But I think, especially when they added, though, they gave Denard more responsibility. I think it was a little thing to say, hey, let's see how he handles it. And we saw the pass defense it was the best in the league. I don't know. I think it might be one of those things where they actually trust Nick a little bit more. Personally, I think maybe let him still do his staff, do most of his staff, and have say over that. I think he's proven that way. I mean, you can say that Doug proved it that way, so he won the Super Bowl. We're doing that, but
you would think,
and for it, but I don't know. See, I don't think it's going to go unless it's somebody who's connected and. I got to go down deep in the weeds when looking see whose agents who and who owes a favor, whatever. But
because Vance Joseph, because he's the first name that's been floated, but Vance is a heck of a lot sexier than Denard Wilson. So do they fall for that trap?
That's why I asked the question the way I did. Nick did say he's open-minded to changing the way that the Eagles play defense, and Vance Joseph is much more well known for blitzing and man-to-man coverage, which the Eagles didn't do a lot of this year. So do you buy it, or do you think that was just window dressing?
I think it's part of window dressing. Also, I thought as well, too, that he said that, he was, when it comes to not giving up big plays and explosiveness and everything else like that, and when you go man-to-man, you blitz, and you get the right quarterback to know, if you get Mahomes to do that or you get somebody else, yeah, you're going to get burnt that way, too. And next thing you know, you're looking back and you see a receiver running 30, 40 yards, continue to run down the field. So I think the blitz opens you up more than that. So I think you'll see somebody who's more apt to play in those cover 3 zone, the cover 3 to cover 4s, just make you methodically go down the field. So that's why I think the Joseph one, I mean, I can be completely wrong, but that's why I'm the Joseph one. I was I don't know about that. It's just forgive off what they were saying and everything else.
One more coordinator hire question. At least this is my perception, and if I'm wrong, please, both you guys who know better than me, correct me. Part of the advancement of their offense coordinator, Brian Johnson, is if you don't hire him, somebody else is going to. If you don't make him an offensive coordinator, someone else is. He's already gone out and interviewed for other offensive coordinator jobs. So you're not only not giving the guy the job, but you're losing him, too, because he's walking out the door. Is that the same with Denard Wilson with Jonathan Gannon, who went so far as to call Wilson his right-hand man? Now we know Vance Joseph, it's kind of inbred here, is the DC in Arizona as of right now, but they could move on from him very easily if that's what Gannon wanted. would he hire Wilson as his defensive coordinator if the Eagles don't elevate him?
Yeah, I can see that as well too. Because Denard, I think with the Cleveland Brown, his name is starting to get out there a little bit more. He's starting to get more and more cachet as well too. And I think people are really starting to see like, hey, especially when you have the numbers that they did. Granted, you could say it was either the secondary, you could say it's the pass rush, what have you. When you have the numbers that they did allow against the pass and the way the success they had on defense this year, you start to look at that whole entire staff and say, okay, what can I bring those elements in there? Who's a young guy who can command respect for the players to bring in? And so, yeah, I think you can see him going out there. I think a lot of the other ones do that. Pretty much, I think that's the only spot I think he can go. He can go out there at least this cycle now with most of them being filled and everything else. But yeah, I can see that. Yeah, between him, I can see him. You lose that one. I'm also wondering if you lose Patullo. I don't know. I think he's going to be a hot name eventually that one too. So you're going to lose a lot of people off of the staff.
It's interesting, and I have no proof of this, but Nick joked, earlier when we talked with him, that can't have anybody. When we asked him about JG potentially leaving, Shane potentially leaving, and taking coaches, he said he told him you can't have anybody. I do think there's a sort of personal relationship where you say, all right, I'm not gonna push it. And the Cardinals are interviewing Dave Borgonzi for their defensive coordinator job. And he worked with Gannon in Indy, and he's interviewing Drew Petzig to be the offensive coordinator who worked with him in Minnesota. So I think there's like a wink between Gannon and Steichen and the Eagles and saying, maybe they'll give him one. Maybe he'll give Gannon, Nick Rallis. Patullo's a little bit different because you can't block a guy from being a coordinator anymore. You used to be able to block guys, but so maybe Patullo, but I don't think we're going to see those two guys pilfer the Eagles coaching staff. I think they have too much respect for Nick, and I think they said, all right, maybe we'll give you one.
I think so too, but I'm selfish now. I want to see if somebody takes that, what's going to happen at the league meetings when you see the coach's picture, and they stand next to each other. There's one trying to punch the other, and then the ribs or something like that. They're like, "Thanks for taking on. I told you not to take them." I just kind of want to see that when it happens personally. But
JG, most of us, I don't know, everybody around the league. I mean, you heard the whispers in Phoenix, Chris. He was getting the Arizona job, unless Bill Bidwell came in and blew everything up, which is always a possibility. But JG went up there yesterday and said, "Oh, I didn't know until after the game," and Howie told me Arizona wanted. Why do these coaches go down this route with that nonsense? It gets off on a bad foot.
No, I saw I was in the locker room. They were both walking out. They were like, "You're fine." So that's when I heard that. I was like, unless how he's like some gangster that we don't know, say you're going to go out there, you're going to smile when you're walking out, you're acting like everything's okay. And then that one too. No, they were walking out fine when I saw on that one too. So I'm like, if somebody told me, yeah, you're going to take this job, I don't know, maybe it was one of those things where he said, hey, I got a request from the Cardinals for you to speak from that way too. I could see that. But the whole, well, I didn't know until this one.
Stick in the league knew he was getting the job, but JG didn't know.
Yeah, it is just, I don't know.
All right, let me bring it back to Howie. Yesterday, John said, looked depressed up there on the riser. Not a bad way. I said he looked scarred. It was probably a combination of those two. He's got to start to line his dominoes up. And he was asked all the prerequisite questions. He didn't give great answers. He didn't have to give great answers. He could just say, we will be proceeding and the like. The first thing has to be Jalen Hurts, right? Before anything else, you need to put it there. There needs to be a domino effect. And the first domino's got to fall. It's got to be the biggest domino of all. And that's Jalen Hurts. Free agency is like second week of March 13th, I think, is legal tampering day, the most annoying phrase in the National Football League. But that's when it kicks in. They're going to get something done before March 13th?
I think so. Legal tampering day is really a combine when that starts, but that's all.
But illegal tampering.
Oh goodness, so they just happen to run into like let's say the cafe where the bagels and stuff. Yeah, but I think they get something done earlier than later because you have to know how much money you're going to spend for a lot of these guys. Like I know they can free up space with like say if they restructure Darius and or Slay. Yeah, he punched me for that. Not just kidding. But yeah, this comes with it. But nah, when you restructure Slay and everybody else like that, then you add more room. But they need to. You can do all those other moves, but until you know how much you're spending, how you're structuring that Hurts deal, you can then that's when you can start to say, okay, I can resign this guy for and restructure this guy's deal and stuff like that. You have to have that signed. I think they will get something signed because it's not. The only thing I can think that will hold it up, and it's if the Hurts camp wants to see if Lamar Jackson's deal gets done before that, because that said that as a
you got Joe Burrow, you got Justin Herbert. They better work fast if they can. At C Franklin News, the great Chris Franklin, read him at nj.com, Lehigh Valley Live, Times of Trenton. He's all over the place. I'll leave you with this. For those paying attention, Howie did give you one little trickle of information. They're going to get some comp picks in 2024 because they're going to lose some free agents because they got too many. They got to pay Jalen. Who's most likely to go amongst the potential free agents?
Bradbury. And I say that because even though I think they want him back because we know their affinity for the shell of and that shell, I mean the defensive line, corners, and the safeties, and then linebackers inside. I think they want him back, but I think somebody's just going to back up the Brinks truck and say, "Hey, you know what? Hey, we want you here," because we all seen this
Could
league.
Be Arizona, by the way. Could be Arizona.
Hey, you love zone? Hey, you play zone? I love zone. Hey, come here. Thanks. Yeah, but I think when you look at an All Pro, a guy who I think some teams will find it endearing the way he ended the season when he came talking to them in the locker room. They'll probably say he's a stand-up guy as well too. I think we got those traits as well too. They brings to the field. I think that he's the one. I think he's, if not the top corner, the second corner that is taken and signed relatively quickly on that one too. So I think he's the first one that's gone. I think the Eagles are going to be back in the pool trying to find another corner. I personally, I would love to see them draft one. So that way you don't have to be in this every year and trying to hope you pick up the one veteran that you hope to just pair up with them. Because it's not every time it's not every year you get a Bradbury. Most of the time or not, you get Steven Nelson, guys like Steven Nelson or something like that. I know Patrick Peterson's out there. Yeah. Maybe you bring him in, but I think Bradbury is.
You're going to hear a lot of Zach McPherson, Josh Jobe talk at the combine.
No Kerry Vincent? No,
Gary's in the
that ship has sailed. Is that
Gary's in the XFL right now, so he can get.
I want Joey Porter. I want the team to draft if they can, if he's still available without having to move up. I want Joey Porter Jr. or Cam Smith. I think that would be.
Yeah, remember they have 2 first-round picks, so that's should be 2 starters if you do it right.
All right, last thing for me, Chris. And again, sorry, Eagle fans, but this is, I think, going to happen. Call it what you want. The tush push, the double cheek push. I think after the NFL decides to redo their rules during this offseason,
it's done.
With the competition
I've been predicting that for months, Jody. It is over. No more tush push moving forward.
I think it should be called Hurts Too Good, with all apologies to John Mellencamp. It's the Eagles is the reason why they're going to take a rule that they allowed into the league 17 years ago and go back and go, yeah, we don't like that whole pushing thing. It's going to be because of the Eagles' success and Jalen Hurts' ability to just move a pile. How big a price are the Eagles going to pay for that? How big? It was a pretty damn important piece of their whole puzzle offensively this year. How bad are the Eagles going to get hurt if they decide to do away with the ability to push a guy from behind?
I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think you can do other things. I think you can motion them out, and when you motion them out, I think you can do different formational things and still have the same success in order to do that. So I'm not so worried about that as much. I think it's just I don't get why they're going to outlaw it. I can see the part where you worried about you had guys like God and everything just basically picking him up and like almost like body slamming him over the goal line to make sure that he got in there, or that you guys like basically or like the offensive line and basically picking him up, trying to push him forward that way. But I don't understand the thing. I know the competition committee is the one that are probably going to put it forth. I wish they kept quiet. They stayed out, and you saw the teams try to what teams actually put the resolution to say, hey, you know what, let's outlaw that, because I think it would add to the field fire if you had a team like the 49ers saying, nah. Yep, the Cowboys or 49ers come out saying, Philadelphia, no, you can't do that. And it's like, that just adds a little bit more to the fire on that.
Whoever decided that this was, and like John said, both he and I, this isn't something that just came out of the blue. Oh, maybe we should do away with it. No, it's been quite obvious there was a loophole in the rules that certain teams were taking advantage of. No one more so than the Philadelphia Eagles. It was going to, at some point, they had to say, no, that this has gotten away from what we want football to be about. So it's going to happen. It doesn't matter who opted for it, who was a defendant of it. It was coming out, and I think we will see that this offseason. Speaking of offseason, we're going to continue to tap into you if that's okay, brother. You got, I know you're going to go on an extended vacation like Aaron Rodgers into the darkness somewhere. But after you come,
are you doing a darkness retreat, Chris?
Yeah. I don't have any shrooms. I don't have any acid or anything that's here. No, I'm working every day. No,
well, then we're gonna keep. If you're keeping working, we're keeping calling. We're gonna stream you up plenty during the off season. Thanks for coming on as regularly as you did during the season. Appreciate it, bud.
Hey guys, I appreciate the invite. It was always great talking to you guys. Thank you very much. No shrooms here. I'm sorry. FBI, I have no shrooms or acid. I don't have any of that stuff. Just said it. Sorry.
Yeah. Ayahuasca.
No shrooms, Franklin. That's what we're going to call you from now going forward. Chris Franklin here with us on Birds 365. All right, he's Johnny Mac. I'm Jody Mac. That makes us back-to-back Birds 365. Les Bowen's going to join us now in less than 20 minutes. So you want to stay